Ronan Farrow, I wanted to start with your exceptional Pulitzer Prize winning reporting on Harvey Weinstein. This was a story that a number of journalists had tried and failed to stand up. What made you decide, I'm going to take this on?
Well, it came to me in the course of an investigative series I was doing, which had an installment about sexual harassment. And I sort of stumbled into it in that there were so many stories that seemed to be about this one powerful producer. And, the important thing to me, Leigh, was this was not about an individual like Harvey Weinstein or even an individual industry like Hollywood. The moment I started hearing the stories, clearly represented what so many women and also men go through in so many industries, where powerful people are able to silence allegations against them. And I was very, very relieved to find that there were enough brave sources that I could break that story in the end.
How hard did Harvey Weinstein and people associated with him try to suppress your reporting?
Very, very hard. And that wasn't just directed at me. It was directed at a whole group of reporters banging their heads against the wall trying to break this thing over many years. People were intimidated. They were followed. One of the things I was glad I was able to expose was that he was using intelligence agents from private spy firms, using false identities, going after people, staking people out, trying to insinuate themselves into people's lives. And that was true of both the women who spoke and some of the journalists, including me.
Your story landed amidst other moments of genuine accountability. I'm thinking, for example, of the case of Bill Cosby. There were a number of cases where famous and powerful people were brought down by revelations of their conduct. Do you think we're witnessing a moment of genuine change or not?
I think if you talk to any survivor of sexual abuse who is still suffering in silence because they're afraid to come forward, you would hear very quickly that there's still a long way to go. And, outside of Hollywood, where there's a significant spotlight, all around the world, there are workers in every industry with a powerful person potentially threatening them and with not enough accountability to stop that. So I think there's a long way to go. But I would also say that I've been really inspired to see how far we've come. When I started talking to sources for not just the Weinstein story, but also other stories that I've done in the last year, they tend to be terrified. And I think that now it's much easier to say in response to that very justifiable terror of retaliation, hey, if you take this huge, brave risk, maybe you'll actually be heard. Because all over the world, I think people are finally being heard.
Some people have warned of a backlash, for example, suggesting that senior men in workplaces may balk at mentoring younger women for fear of being accused of inappropriate behaviour. What do you think of that?
I haven't seen any metrics that actually suggest that there's been a chilling effect in terms of mentorship. I was talking to a tech executive recently who said, this is ridiculous. You can mentor young women. In this case, it's a guy, so he was talking about the risk of the optics of being in rooms with women. And he said, you can mentor people with the door open in your office. You can travel with people and still have other people around and keep it professional. I think for most of us who work with colleagues of all stripes, the general rule of just be respectful is enough. I certainly haven't felt in my own life where I have, young staff and people of both genders around me where, I always want to be professional. I haven't found that there's any restriction as long as I'm just being normal and rational and treating people as I would want to be treated.
On another matter, you have a book that's just come out about American foreign policy and the United States' place in the world. How do you think that the Trump presidency is affecting America's standing around the globe?
In multiple American administrations over recent decades, you've seen this sidelining of diplomats and negotiators and peacemakers, and the consequence of that is a much more militarized posture for America around the world. I was a diplomat in Afghanistan where, if you wanted to build a well or talk to a community in rural Afghanistan, you had to do it through the Pentagon. And that increasingly is true outside of those war zones as well. It's true just about everywhere the United States does business. This, I think, really has resulted in a deterioration of America's ability to negotiate and to support its allies. It makes it harder for us to build consensus. And the Trump administration is doubling down on that problem in a really unprecedented way, Leigh.
What do you think about what's been going on in immigration policy in the US with the Trump administration separating children from their parents who've crossed the border illegally, and then last week his executive order outlawing the practice?
Well, it's heartbreaking, and I've been heartened to see that in the face of evidence of what look very much like human rights abuses, the American public has really risen up and called for reform, and I'm happy to see that the administration seems to be responding to that.
Many of your siblings were adopted from overseas. They came from disadvantage. What impact has that had on your thinking about global issues like refugee policy and immigration and aid and so on?
Well, in a sense, all my siblings and loved ones were refugees of one kind or another. You know, these were young men and women that the world had left behind, and I love and care about those people. So it certainly gave me, on a very basic level, a sense of empathy for people struggling to get to a safer part of the world where there is more opportunity. And one of the things that I'm proud of as an American is that we have always stood strong in favor of those kinds of open doors. And obviously that's a huge flashpoint in the United States right now, but I think there is still a lot of compassion, and you've seen that in recent days in terms of the reaction to this immigration news.
Ronan Farrow, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you enjoy your upcoming visit to Australia. Thanks very much for your time.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Thanks, Leigh.